Sure. Here's section 1 of the story script, exactly 760 words, focused, tight, and in line with your outline. The sound of rain tapped against the windows like a reminder of how quiet the house had become. Emily stared at her phone, rereading David's message for the third time. Flight's delayed. I'll be in New York for the weekend. Love you. She locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the coffee table. Her fingers lingered against the surface before pulling away slowly, as if letting go of more than just glass. The silence felt heavier now. She glanced at the time, realizing she hadn't eaten. The idea of dinner felt pointless. She walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge, staring blankly at the neatly stacked containers, meals she had prepared for two but always ended up eating alone. Grabbing a bottle of wine, she poured herself a glass and returned to the living room. The fireplace flickered, casting shadows on the framed wedding photo across the room. She looked at it for a long moment, her expression unreadable. The photo showed two people wrapped in a happiness that now felt like someone else's memory. Back then, David would hold her hand for no reason. Now, even his kisses felt like formalities. She sipped the wine slowly, letting the warmth numb her. She pulled a photo album from the shelf and flipped through the pages. Smiling faces, holidays, the honeymoon in Greece. She stopped on one particular image, David lifting her on the beach, both laughing mid-motion. Her thumb traced the edge of the photo. When did we become strangers? She whispered. The doorbell rang. She froze. No one ever visited unannounced, especially not at night. Placing the wine glass down, she walked toward the door, uncertain. Through the peephole, she saw a man. Familiar. Jake. David's old college friend. She opened the door slowly. Jake? Her voice betrayed her confusion. Hey, Em, he said, smiling. Rain dripped from his jacket. I was passing through. David mentioned I could crash here if I was ever in town. She hesitated. He didn't tell me. Classic David, Jake said with a soft chuckle. But I can grab a motel if it's weird. No, she interrupted. Come in. You'll get soaked. He stepped inside, removing his wet jacket. Still smells like cinnamon in here. I bake when I'm bored, she replied, locking the door behind him. Jake followed her into the living room, glancing around with nostalgia. Same place, huh? Same everything. She handed him a towel and a cup of coffee, then sat across from him. So what brings you around? Business meeting in town tomorrow. Figured I'd see if David was home. He's not. Didn't think so, Jake said, sipping. Always on the move, that guy. Emily nodded, tucking her legs under her on the couch. He lives in airports these days. They sat in silence for a beat. I always wondered how you managed it, Jake said. Managed what? The distance. The waiting. She looked at him. I tell myself it's worth it. Some days, I believe it. Jake didn't push. Instead, he leaned back, relaxed, comfortable. She noticed how little he had changed. Still that confident smile, still sharp eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. They talked for an hour, catching up on people they hadn't seen in years, awkward moments from college, stories about mutual friends. Emily found herself laughing. Really laughing. It had been a long time. You haven't aged a day, he said mid-conversation, catching her off guard. She laughed, but the compliment sat with her. That's kind of you to say. No, really. You're still, you. His words wrapped around her like a blanket, unexpected, gentle, and oddly comforting. Her smile softened. I don't feel like me lately. Jake looked at her carefully. You ever get lonely? She paused. Sometimes, she admitted. But I manage. Jake nodded. You always were strong. The air shifted between them. The warmth of the fireplace. The rain outside. His eyes didn't leave hers. She felt it, the quiet magnetism pulling them closer without a single movement. She blinked, clearing the moment, breaking eye contact. It's late, she said. You must be tired. He stood, understanding. Where should I crash? Guest room's ready. Down the hall. Thanks, Em. As he walked away, she sat frozen, her heart beating slightly faster than usual. She picked up her wine glass again, but it felt too warm now. She stared at the dark liquid, swirling it once before setting it back down, untouched. Her phone buzzed. Another message from David. I'll call you tomorrow. Love you. She didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe later. Here is section 2 of your infidelity short story script, exactly 760 words, focused and direct with no repetition from section 1. Emily woke to sunlight cutting through the curtains. She stayed still for a moment, listening. The house wasn't silent. Distant movement. She remembered. Jake. She stepped out of her room and found him in the kitchen, shirtless, cooking eggs like he belonged there. His back muscles tensed as he flipped the pan. He turned and smiled when he saw her. Hope you don't mind. Figured I'd make breakfast. She shook her head. I'm just not used to company. They ate casually, the air between them comfortable but charged. Jake told her stories from the years they'd missed. Failures, some regrets. He talked about a woman he'd loved who left because he couldn't commit. Emily listened, curious, then surprised by how easy it was to tell him about her own doubts, about feeling invisible, unheard. Jake studied her as she spoke, never interrupting. Sounds like you've been carrying too much alone. Emily shrugged. That's marriage, sometimes. No. That's survival. She looked away, the words hitting closer than she wanted to admit. They went for groceries later. Normal things. She hadn't laughed this much with anyone in months. He made her feel seen in a way that unsettled her. He noticed things, how she ran her fingers along the edge of a cart, how she tilted her head when she was thinking. Back home, she poured them wine. They talked more, about fear, about time, about missed chances. At some point, Jake said, "You've changed. Softer. Quieter. I remember when your laugh could shake a room." It still can, she said, smiling. I just forget sometimes. His gaze lingered. I never forgot. She didn't respond. The wine softened her edges, but the meaning in his voice sharpened everything. She stood and walked to the kitchen under the pretense of checking the food, but really to breathe later. They sat on the couch again, the lights dimmed. Her legs were curled beside her, a blanket across both their laps. Their hands almost touched, but not quite. Jake broke the silence. You ever wonder how things would have turned out if we'd met at a different time? She didn't answer right away. Then softly, sometimes. I used to think about it, he said. Back then. But you chose David. I did, she said. And I still do. Most days. He turned toward her. You don't have to pretend. She faced him. His hand reached across and gently covered hers. The moment stretched. The pull between them was real, undeniable. She didn't move her hand, but her voice was steady. This isn't a good idea. I didn't say it was, he said, not pulling away. But it's honest. She let out a shaky breath. What happens if I don't pull away? Jake didn't speak. His eyes just searched hers. Her lips parted slightly. The space between them vanished by inches. Then, just before their lips met, she turned her head away. I can't, she whispered. Jake leaned back slowly. I know. The silence returned, thicker now. She stood, removing the blanket from her lap. I should sleep, she said. Her voice trembled slightly. Of course. She walked to her room and closed the door behind her. Then leaned against it, heart pounding, eyes wide in the dark. She hadn't done anything, technically. But something had already broken. She sat at her vanity and opened her journal. The pen hovered, then moved fast. I almost kissed him. I wanted to. I miss being desired. I miss being touched for more than habit. I wanted to feel alive again, just once. Does that make me unfaithful? Does it matter that I didn't let it happen? She closed the book. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror. Eyes rimmed with emotion she hadn't shown out loud. A knock came at the door. Emily? Jake's voice was quiet. She said nothing, unsure if she wanted him to come in or walk away. After a moment, his footsteps faded. She exhaled deeply. Climbing into bed, she stared at the ceiling, trying to slow her heartbeat. Nothing had happened. But in her mind, everything had. She couldn't undo the feeling of wanting. Couldn't unsee the way Jake looked at her, not with expectation, but recognition. Like he remembered someone she'd forgotten she used to be. She turned her head toward the window. The rain had stopped. The silence returned, but now it pulsed with tension, unspoken truths, and choices she hadn't made, yet. Here is section 3 of your infidelity story script, written in the same tone, to the point, with no repetition and exactly 760 words. Jake stood at the door with his bag in hand. Neither of them spoke right away. Emily kept her arms crossed, unsure what expression belonged on her face. He finally said, "Thanks for letting me stay." She nodded, lips pressed together. "I shouldn't have said what I said last night," he added. "You didn't lie," she replied. "That's what makes it worse." He hesitated. "If things were different, but they're not," she said, cutting him off gently. "And I can't pretend they are." He gave her a faint smile. "You ever change your mind?" "I won't," she said, softer now. He leaned in, hugged her once. It lasted longer than it should have. She didn't pull away. When he let go, He looked at her one last time, then turned and left. She shut the door, locked it, and stood still. The house felt empty again, but not in the same way. David's voice echoed from the front door later that evening. "I'm home." She moved toward him, wiping her hands on a towel. He hugged her, kissed her cheek, talked about delayed flights, traffic, his hotel. She listened, nodded, made the right sounds. He didn't notice anything different. They sat down to dinner. He complimented the food but didn't ask how her weekend was. He barely looked up from his phone. She stared at her plate, mind drifting back to the moment Jake reached for her hand. Her throat tightened. After dinner, David unpacked in the bedroom. She folded his shirts absent-mindedly as he talked about the new clients. His voice faded in and out. She nodded at the right places but didn't really hear him. He turned to her. "You're quiet." "Just tired," she replied. He kissed her forehead. "I've missed you." She forced a smile. "I know." Lying in bed beside him, she stared at the ceiling while he scrolled through emails. He didn't touch her. Didn't ask what she had done while he was away. She didn't volunteer it. He turned off the light and rolled over. She whispered into the darkness, "I almost kissed someone." He didn't respond. He was already asleep. She closed her eyes, unsure if she wanted to cry or scream. Her body didn't move. Her heart did. The next morning came too fast. David left early for a meeting. She stood at the window watching his car drive away, wondering if he'd notice a different woman standing there when he returned. She poured coffee and sat with her journal again. It never became physical. But it almost did. "And I let it get close because I missed being seen. I missed feeling important. I missed being someone else couldn't look away from. I used to think cheating was black and white. But now I live in the gray, and it's louder than I ever imagined." She closed the book, heart heavy. She hadn't done anything technically wrong. No lips touched, no clothes removed. But the betrayal still throbbed like a bruise. The rest of the day passed slowly. She went through motions, laundry, emails, groceries. But every quiet moment reminded her of that couch, that look, that question. That night, David asked if she wanted to watch a movie. She agreed. They sat on the same couch where Jake had Saturday. His spot felt colder now. She leaned against David and tried to pretend it felt natural. Midway through the film, he fell asleep. She looked at him, peaceful, trusting. Her heart cracked at the sight. She whispered, "I don't know if you still see me. I don't know if I still see us." The only response was the soft rhythm of his breathing. She got up quietly and walked to the window. Rain had started again. Streetlights blurred through the glass. In her mind, Jake's voice echoed, "You deserve more." She whispered to herself, "Do I?" She wanted to believe love was enough. That loyalty could override neglect. That being good could silence the need to feel wanted, but part of her knew something had shifted. Maybe not visible, but real. She didn't know what came next. She only knew that what existed now wasn't sustainable. The rain hit the window harder. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes hollow. She said out loud, "Just once, I didn't cheat." Then softer, "But I did." And the house, silent again, didn't argue.